Thanks everybody for joining us this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you are. We're so glad to have everyone here for the International Lawyers Network session with Society 54 this morning on getting the first meeting. We're joined by Jill Huse and John Mattson, and they're going to lead the session today. I don't know if you guys want to monitor the questions, a little housekeeping, or you'd like me to monitor the questions and I can jump in and ask you. How we can handle that however you'd like.
That'd be great if you could monitor those. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Sure. So right now we have everybody muted. So if you have access to your computers, I am assuming most people are working remotely. So if you have access to your computers, if you have any questions as we're going, please type those in. I'll keep an eye on the chat. And I will let Jill and John know as we're going, and we can answer those as we go along. Okay, so with that, I will turn it over to you guys, and we're really looking forward to the session.
Thanks, Lindsay, and good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. And just to reiterate with what Lindsay said, we like this to be interactive. We can talk for a long time on these subjects, but please raise your hand, please ask questions in the question box as we go along. So just by way of introduction, and then we'll jump right into it. My name is John Mattson, and I serve as the Chief Strategy Officer for Society 54. I have been in law firm marketing, business development, coaching for over 10 years, but I've been in professional services for over 25. I actually started as a state and local tax accountant in the Big Four. Then I like to say I moved to the dark side of business development and marketing at another Big Four firm. And I've done all kinds of roles such as coaching, actual direct sales, internal, external type work. So certainly glad to be with you today and discussing how to get the first meeting. Jill?
Thanks, John. My name is Jill Huse, and I am a partner with Society 54. Prior to launching Society 54, I spent the first 15 years of my career in accounting and law firms, and launched Society 54 with my business partner, Heather McCullough, about 5.5 years ago, with the focus really around helping lawyers and law firms with revenue generation and being very strategic around those goal setting and providing that accountability. I am all about results, so that's what I really focus on when it comes to my particular practice. I have a master's in law firm management and certifications in leadership, change management, and coaching. So today we're going to talk a little bit about getting to the first meeting, as John said, and while this can be a daunting thing, it is definitely doable. And it's something that, in a supportive role within the law firms, I had to do a lot of helping my attorneys with, but now on the other side in a consulting role, I have to do the same thing that you guys are doing. So practice does make perfect on all of this stuff. So to begin, building relationships and finding new opportunities, we really need to be able to get that first meeting. Oh, goodness. Sorry. My computer is going a little bit faster than I can talk. So in today's business environment, people are very pressed for time and often closely guarded with their connections and their calendars. And at the same time, our competitors are knocking on the doors, trying to get that meeting with them, trying to get that time. So we're facing competition like never before. It's a very competitive environment and little time and attention from our contacts. So in today's workshop, for the next 55 minutes or so, we're going to share some winning practices for getting access to new connections, motivating them to want to invest, to take the time to spend with you and getting to know you. And with these strategies and this client-focused approach, we're going to be helping you ask for those meetings, stand out from the crowd, and get more of those initial meetings. So before I reveal the next slide, which I already did if you were paying attention, but just in case you haven't, we'd like just for you to use the chat feature and think about what you want to get out of this session. And we'll monitor this, Lindsay. We'll just keep an eye on it as we're moving along. But if you could take some time just to type in the chat if there's anything that you want to get out of this session, and we'll try to work that into our discussions.
It's probably in there already, but just in case, we like to be doubly sure. And if you have any ideas of what you specifically want to get out, please just type that right in and we will address it.
So some of the objectives of what you are going to be learning during this workshop, you're going to be able to develop a compelling reason to meet. That's probably the first challenge of trying to help them understand why they want to meet with you. Then we're going to talk to you about how to ask for the first meeting with confidence and with that client focus in mind. We're going to help you identify winning practices for gaining access to the people that you want to meet with, and then describe how to work with the gatekeepers, including using voicemail very effectively. So the agenda for today's session, we're going to talk about ways to warm up the cold call, develop compelling reasons to meet, ask for that first meeting. We're going to talk through some barriers to connecting and how to deal with those, and then we're going to offer some key takeaways.
So, cold calls, something that we had to do a lot more before there were tools that we have that we didn't used to have. But so I like to say that there's no such thing as a cold call, because if you do your homework, you can find ways to warm it up. But really, at the end of the day, they're the least ideal way to get a meeting. It's very hard to get a first meeting just out of the blue, completely cold. But we're in luck, because once again, we have many, many tools that we could do that. So what are some ways that we can warm up a cold call? Well, in many cases, you want to be able to refer to any past contact that you've had. Even if you think they may have forgotten that contact, will help warm up that call. You might say, hey, we bumped into each other at XYZ conference last year, or I worked with you and your team at XYZ company several years ago when I was part of that team. So, personal examples, we have a legal marketing association conference that I am consistently meeting with folks. You meet hundreds of people, but probably have 5 meaningful conversations a day, perhaps, at these conferences. So being able to follow up with folks and mention that you're both at that conference, and maybe it's all about trying to find a common thread to get them to say yes. Because I don't know about you, but the strangest thing about a cold call is when you first reach out and you say, hey, Jill, my name is John Mattson. I am with Society 54. And the reason why I'm calling you is this, but you want to be able to pull in a common thread quickly, because as soon as Jill says to me, oh, yes, I remember, or gives me some kind of acknowledgement, then the strangeness kind of goes away. So the first thing you do want to do is work through your connections. And what is the very best way to work through your connections? I mean, we've got this tool now. Jill, I'm going to pick on you. What's the one tool that we use to work through our connections these days?
The prospect targeting list.
Prospect targeting list, LinkedIn, actually, or even like your alumni lists. So LinkedIn is the most wonderful way to find out. If you're trying to get to a person at a specific company, at your client, your former client, reaching out to LinkedIn to figure out who else is connected with those folks is an absolute must. I find myself generally, when I'm prospecting or trying to find folks to connect with, I am rarely anything more than the second connection away on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the way to do it. But also alumni networks and many other tools can be used as well. So when I find somebody that is connected to somebody that I want to get to, there are 3 ways that I kind of, ask for help. The ideal is I see that Jill is connected with somebody that I want to get to. I reach out to Jill and I say, hey, is there any way that you can make a personal introduction for me? And that would be great, even if you did it by an email. So Jill reaching out to that individual and say, hey, I think you two would mutually benefit from knowing each other, explaining why, and saying, I leave it to you two to, figure out the where, the when, the why. Leaves me an opportunity to completely reach out to that person and set it up. But there are times when Jill knows that person a little bit, but doesn't maybe feel comfortable with actually making that personal introduction. But she says, you know what, go ahead and use my name. So then, I will gladly go back and say, hey, Jill mentioned that I should reach out to you. This is why I'm looking to speak with you. And I'm hoping that we can discuss further, whatever the subject is that we want to. So that's the second best thing. The third best thing is Jill, prefers that I not use her name for whatever reason. She doesn't know that person that well, or maybe she's working on that person in her own right for some reason and doesn't want to use what I call political capital. And maybe she can just only give me intelligence. And that's fine, because once again, we're trying to figure out what are common threads between you and the person that you're trying to reach out to. What are connections? Did we maybe go to the same university? Did we maybe work at the same firm? Have we lived in the same city before? We're trying to find common threads because folks tend to like folks that have similar experiences. It's just a way to get a conversation going before you get to the crux of it all. So when you do reach out to these folks, when you do have those common threads, use them early for you so you can start getting some, I guess, positive affirmation from these folks. And then, of course, do as much research on the individual and on their business, on their business issues, so that you are customizing, the compelling reason why you should all meet. So the information is power. We have incredible resources that we didn't used to have before, namely LinkedIn, but many other ways that we could do that. So next slide, Joe.
Yeah, and just to kind of talk a little bit more about John's comment, the other thing that you can do when you're sending out an email that may be a little bit cold is just start off with, "We have yet to be properly introduced." That kind of sets the tone for, you guys may not know each other, but it's a good standard comment to kind of just set the email off. And also, really kind of putting up front how you may be connected to them. Whatever deep connection you may have by looking through social media. Social media is fantastic for finding out that information and just trying to dig in a little bit more to those connections.
And Jill, actually, before we go to the next slide, I'd like to, as appropriate, if they're not already in this presentation, I'd like to answer some of these questions as we go along. Carl, thanks for your question. You said how to go from a friend to a client. And I should anticipate this for every time we do this presentation. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on it, and then Jill, if you want to add anything too, if I've missed anything. The way I look at it is, if you in your firm can truly help your friend and make them become a client, they have business issues, they have goals within their business. There is nothing wrong with asking business from friends, in my opinion, especially if you know darn well that you or your firm, the power of your firm, can help them. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They have personal goals that they need to get things done. So when you have the tools to help your friends, who else more would you want to help? I mean, they are, they say that people want to do business with folks that they know, like, and trust. My assumption is if you're a friend with this individual, they already know, like, and trust you. So I never feel bad. Sometimes we feel guilty when we're selling our services, but at the end of the day, every one of us generally works for a company that needs to be able to sell their services, service their clients in order to be successful. So helping your friends become clients and helping them with their business issues, that should not be anything that we feel guilty about. Jill, do you have anything more to add on that one?
Yeah, I would say everybody has their own style with how to turn really, personal relationships into clients. But I think one effective way to do that is ask your friends for referrals. Ask them to connect you with somebody. It kind of shows, it's a very soft way to approach that conversation, but it shows them that you are looking to grow your practice. So they can be mindful of opportunities where to connect you and kind of loop you into different things.
And then I guess a soft question that you could ask of friends is, you and your company would be an excellent client to me and our firm. If there's anything ever that we could do for you that would be helpful, please let me know. That way you're not asking them to respond. You're not putting them on the spot. You're making a statement that they would be a great client. So I've, depending on the situation, if you don't want to go right at it and say, hey, I don't understand, we're friends, why don't you give me business? That's a little bit in your face. If you just say something to the degree of, you guys would sure be a great client, I think that's at least showing your interest. When you do not show your interest, they actually assume that you don't want their business. So if that's not the case, make sure you find a way to let them know.
Great, thanks, John. So let's talk about some ways that we can really kind of think about this. And it's really thinking about it from the client perspective. Why would somebody want to meet with you? You need to kind of flip the switch and not think about you and what you could do for them, but think about what their business challenges are. How can you connect them? what can you do to really kind of help them with succeeding in their business? So we're going to talk through a few ways to kind of think about some different reasons to meet from the client's perspective. Cultivating relationships with more law firms, just in case. You never know when somebody's going to get upset with their law firm and want to start to look around and maybe give you an opportunity to, get on the list. Hearing about trends and winning practices in the industry, it's so important to talk to clients that are in the industry to really understand what's going on with them, what's going on with their business, what kind of challenges they are. And if you're not asking the questions, you're not going to be able to listen to what those answers are. Having a fresh perspective on somebody from the outside, just again, kind of thinking about people that are outside of your firm and outside of the common knowledge that you all know, and really kind of listening. Getting a feel for what it might be to work with your firm. Like John said, people want to work with those that they know, like, and trust. So really kind of starting to develop that relationship. I think this one's the most powerful, and it's gaining the access to the power of your firm. There are so many connections that you can build and help your clients with, and prospective clients, just within the connections of your firm. Somebody may be a neighbor with somebody that they want to connect with, or you may have, your kids may be in soccer together. There's all kinds of connections that we have within the confines of our firm that we could help our clients really develop those deeper relationships.
Hey, Jill,
Learning about it. Yeah.
if I could just add a little more color to that. Consistently, when I'm working with attorneys that I coach, they may say something like, I'm a litigator. Unless the company has litigation, I can't help. Or I'm a bankruptcy attorney. So clearly, unless they're having issues, how can I help? But the power of your firm puts you as an ambassador. So not only do you represent the services that you personally bring, but if you think of yourself broader and think about all of your colleagues, your partners, your fellow associates, and everything that they do, now you're actually delivering a much larger toolkit, not just what you do. So go from thinking about I'm a litigator, I'm an IP attorney, I'm this or that, to everything that the firm delivers to our clients, every way that we provide value. I'm an ambassador to that, and I can bring that to the folks that I am building relationships with.
That's a great point. And that's, if you really want to build your practice, that's the best way to do it. Being able to give work to your colleagues, the work that you're not working on, to free you up to do other things, that just is a whole new revenue stream for you to really kind of explode your practice. Some of the other ones, learning about emerging business issues or ways to deal with, issues that the company is currently having, getting leads on business opportunities, both personal and professional. So really kind of thinking about it from that client's perspective and what they might want to know, what they might want to get out of that meeting with you, to really position that as a win-win for them.
So developing a compelling reason to meet. So there were times back when I was directly in sales with PricewaterhouseCoopers that I could use the power of the firm. And what I mean from that is, occasionally I'd find the chief financial officer of a large company, and I find that we don't have any relationship with that individual. So I could literally call up and they would say, well, what would you like to meet about? And I would say something to the degree of, well, it doesn't appear that we have a relationship, PwC and ABC company. And you're a great company here in our market, and I just think that we should have a connection. And then sometimes I might say, but honestly, if you're tackling an issue right now, if you'd like me to bring subject matter experts to the table, I'm glad to do so. And then you kind of co-develop what that agenda or that meeting looks like. But in many cases, you probably really need to build that compelling reason to meet, build what we marketing types call a value proposition, and give them a reason why. And you do that based on research, what you know about the company, and trying to build your best case. Now, what is a value proposition? You've probably heard that many times from us marketing types, but I consider it's as simple as issue, action, impact. So what is the issue that you are working to help a company through? What is the action that you take when you help solve that issue? and what is the impact that happens as a result of you taking that action, or better put, probably, what is the benefit that they receive as a result of that? And this needs to be about them. It not about you. So let's just say, I'm going to refer to perhaps an issue, action, impact, or a compelling reason to meet based on an activity that we're going to do in a few slides forward. So we have heard you've been considering opening a research and development facility in the Greater Toronto area. So that's the first bullet right there. What's the relevant business issue? In the last 2 years, we have helped more than a dozen companies enter or expand their operations locally by helping them with site selection, including the negotiation of tax credits and other incentives, for arranging for financing and closing on the property itself. So that's number 2, the approach, the action that you take to help the client. And then what's the benefit to them? The final one, we have saved these clients, these dozen or so clients over the last 2 years, millions of dollars. So that is perhaps a compelling reason to meet. So as you're looking to kind of set up the meeting, and remember, your goal is not to sell an engagement. You're not going to sell an engagement. Your goal is to get a meeting. So remember what the win is. In this case, it's not winning a piece of work. That's many steps down the road. But what you're trying to do is win the appointment. Now, after building the value proposition, I also like to ask a closing question. So here I've just told them that we have saved these clients millions of dollars. So then I say, can we put a small team together and share some of these experiences with your team? So that would be the ask. Now I am asking for that meeting. Once you make that ask, sometimes that's called the closing question, you just want to be quiet. Let them think. If it takes 30 seconds, let it go. You know, ideally they say yes. Sometimes they might want further clarification. Maybe you give more detail. But to the degree that you can, you know, they say, well, it's less so about the R&D facility. We've already got folks on that. You know, we're looking for something regarding this. Then you're kind of co-developing what that meeting looks like, and you're probably going to win, and you're probably going to get your meeting. Now, one thing that you should do, or a trick that I like to do when I'm trying to figure out whether or not this is a compelling reason to meet, is to say, so what? I mean, you know, to some degree, you know, when I gave you the PricewaterhouseCoopers example, if I said, well, we're PricewaterhouseCoopers, we should know each other, you know, what if they were to say, so what? Okay, that's not necessarily always compelling. It sometimes worked for me, but using that to see, you know, to check your value proposition, say, so what? And you might be able to make it even stronger. All right, next slide, Joe. So be prepared that it's very likely that when you ask for this meeting that the client would ask what the agenda might be. And as opposed to being absolutely prescriptive, I suggest that you actually, I used the word co-develop before, but actually saying, well, my ideas would be that we would meet with this, this, and this, and I might bring these experts to the table. But when you do that, ask them for feedback. Does that sound right to you? Are there other issues that you're dealing with? I'd like to make sure that you get as much as you can out of this meeting. So things to consider as you prepare. What is your value proposition for the meeting? You know, does it make sense? Does it survive the so what test? Why should they talk to you? What will they get out of it, right? Don't think of it from your perspective. Obviously, you'd like to get work out of this, but think about what they will benefit from as a result of this meeting and eventually, hopefully, working for you. Are you sold on it? Would you have made the time for that? Would you have set this meeting up? They really don't owe you anything. You know, you're asking, you know, to spend time with them, and time is obviously a limited commodity. So think about the reasons why they might object to it. Anticipate what they might say. What questions do you think they might ask? You know, will they ask about fees? Will they ask about approach? Will they ask about team? What questions do you have for the client? Asking intelligent questions will let them know that you've done this before and make it more likely for them to say yes to it. Also, when setting up these meetings or trying to, you know, reach out to get the first meeting, think about what good times might be to reach out. They say that good times could be before or after business hours, early in the morning, later in the day. It might be less likely that there'll be a gatekeeper to get in your way. And we're going to talk about that in a few more slides. Bad times to call tend to be late Friday afternoon, especially in the summer. During crunch times, during any busy seasons. So think about timing. Put yourself in the potential client's shoes and think about what might work for them. One thing that I've always done through my career, especially in sales, and it's what I try to discuss with all of the coaches that I work with, is at the end of the day, this is just a little tip, not necessarily about getting the first meeting, but I can't tell you how many first meetings I've gotten as a result of that. At the end of the day, when I'm working and it's time to go home and I've been done with the day, I play this game called Do One More Thing. So I think that I'm done. Maybe I even have my coat on. I have a tendency to make one more phone call, send one more email, check on one more proposal that's out there, or one more pitch doc that I sent to follow up on. And I can't tell you how many times that I have actually moved forward whatever I was trying to get done with that individual, whether it was win work, whether it was get the meeting, when I have done one more thing. So I like to give little secrets along the way that I joke that if you do this, you'll be doing more than 95% of your competition. Consider that one more thing at the end of the day. So, all right, I can't remember if I have the next slide or if you do, Jill. Oh, I think that one's yours. No, it's mine. I'm sorry. So once again, talking about research, we have great tools that we used to not have before. Hoover's, D&B. There are a number of business databases that you could do to research, or even as simple as going to the company's website as well. Finding out their litigation history. Thomson Reuters has a good product called Monitor Suite that gives litigation history here in the US. I don't know how that works internationally, but I assume that there are ways to look that up. Make sure to do a conflict check within your own firm as well. I think that's something that if we're overzealous in our business development efforts, we might not even realize that there's a current relationship or current opportunity with an individual or with a potential client. Public company filing documents here in the States, that's SEC, in Canada, that's CEDAR. Current docket, getting an idea of what their current docket looks like. Getting information on the individuals that you're going to work with is extremely important. Once again, we talked about that on LinkedIn. And then doing a firm relationship check as well too. I don't know, there are various tools that you could check to see if folks may have a relationship. I can't remember the names of all of them. ContactNet is one of them. Wabbit is another one, kind of a funny word. Some firms actually do what I call the all points bulletin. They will actually just send out a note locally or throughout the entire firm. Does anyone have a relationship with such and such a company? Whatever, I guess, is within the culture and context of your firm, though. Sometimes those relationship checks get a little bit tedious for folks if you're in a large firm. So doing as much research as you can it will help you get that meeting. Next slide, please.
John, you referred to this earlier, but LinkedIn is also a great research tool. The who knows who kind of feature on LinkedIn. And if you don't want somebody knowing that you're checking them out, you can always change the privacy settings. But I found LinkedIn to be almost as powerful as your internal database.
It killed the cold call, I like to say. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so this is a tool that we will provide Lindsay with to share with you guys after this session, but we wanted you to get thinking about what that meeting actually looks like. And it's really important that you start to think about what your words are, because everybody has their own style. Everybody has their own way of that they like to communicate different things. So we really want you to be thinking about the preparation side of your meeting. Mentioning, what that past connection be, how you're going to say it, what those words are going to be, using your value proposition, either your personal value proposition or the firm's value proposition, to really kind of think about why you want to meet, identifying those issues, sharing that insight, validating why this meeting is important. Co-developing that meeting agenda. Co-developing is something that John brought to us as a concept, and we love it. We work with our clients all the time about thinking through how to really kind of work through the meeting so everybody has a say in what you're going to be talking about. and then agreeing on next steps. And that's something that no matter what meeting you're in, whether it's a prospect meeting, a client meeting, meeting with your internal, attorneys in developing relationships, agreeing on those next steps are an important thing that you need to be thinking about before you leave any meeting. What's going to happen next? So we will share this tool after the session's over. So now we'd like to just kind of get you to start thinking about a case study scenario that we've put together. I'm going to read this, and then what I want you guys to be doing is thinking about how to really kind of work through this particular case study, and just comment in the chat feature of any thoughts that you might have, and then we'll work through some of those solutions. So recently, a Smith Jones LLP team member attended an industry conference where he met someone who represents the general counsel at Toronto Plastics. SJ does not have any relationship with Toronto Plastics at this time, even though the firm and the company are both located in Toronto. The SJ team member and the new contact talked briefly about how Toronto Plastics is considering opening a research and development facility in the Greater Toronto area, and about how thinly stretched the legal function at the company is. They also chatted briefly about a mutual contact, Susan Anderson, who once worked for Toronto Plastics but left for a position outside the industry about 6 months ago. At the industry conference, the CEO of Rockcliffe Company, a leading company in the industry, gave the keynote address. Rockcliffe is a big SJ client. In her address, the CEO shared her views about the outlook for the industry and in the next few years, the impact of the product innovation and globalization of the industry and the challenges of acquiring, retaining, and developing talent. The SJ team members' encounter with the new contact took place prior to the CEO's address, which the new contact planned to attend but was not able to do so. The SJ team member was not able to connect again with the new contact prior to the end of the conference. Today, the SJ team member is placing a call to this new contact to follow up. So, how would you go about initiating this relationship with this new contact?
So folks, go ahead and write items down in your question or comment box. And if you don't mind just kind of sharing what you consider to be facts that you think are pretty leverageable, approaches that can be taken, if there are ways that you think you would specifically approach, okay, we've got one already. Thank you, Lindsay. Reach out to Susan Anderson and get some background information on her time with Toronto Plastics. Beautiful, right? So here we've got all these different clues that are actually in this activity. And I've got a couple other ideas on how we can maybe leverage Susan as well, but I want to see if other folks actually put that in. But Susan Anderson is a common friend between this new acquaintance that we have and the person that met them. So that is gold right there. So definitely Susan is extremely important in this. I'm very curious if anyone else has ideas or other, nice hidden clues or leverageable points here that we can use. We'll give it a couple seconds and see if anyone writes it down.
It's a shame we can't call on people. Okay, Michelle came up with one. Offer to update the GC about the CEO address at the meeting.
Boom. Yes. So you had a discussion earlier. They were interested in going to that industry leading CEO discussing. Remember, this CEO in this company is also a current client of your firm. So if we put ourselves in this attorney's place, this is a great client of your firm. So that's actually valuable as well, but that is very easy. So I might reach out to that individual when I made the phone call, and I might say, hey, did you get a chance to hear that keynote speaker? And if they say no, I had to address an issue back, for work, hey, I'd love to give you some updates on that. It was really a great speech, right? So that is a wonderful piece of value. So what I like to do when I'm asking for meetings, once again, we're giving. I'd much rather give a give than ask and ask, if that makes sense. So obviously I'm going to be asking for a meeting, and that's an ask, and I don't want to just jump into that, but more things of value that I can give ahead of time, the more likely they're going to say yes, because they're like, hey, this person's giving me value. So there's some key points in this background information, Jill, that I really like. So my ears kind of perked up when I heard that they're opening a research and development facility. Remember, I kind of made the value proposition example a few slides back on that one. I also heard thinly stretched legal department, right? That's generally music to our ears when we're attorneys trying to help folks out. And then once again, as was mentioned earlier, the mutual contact in Susan Anderson. So that's pretty good stuff. Any other ideas, folks? Please put them down. There's no really bad answers here. We're not going to laugh at you. This is a safe place. I promise you that. So once again, tell them about the keynote presentation. I've got that crossed off. Jill, do you have any ideas that you've thought of? I've got a few here, if not.
I might think about, since the CEO is a woman, if there's any kind of opportunities to leverage any women's groups, opportunities to, kind of think through what that might look like, any kind of a diversity issues that you can address. And, women's groups are great platforms to really develop those key relationships. And I think that that's another key in here, is to kind of think through how that might impact building that relationship as well.
Absolutely, and apologies for the phone in the background.
Do you want me to go to the next slide, John? Oh, Lindsay came up with another one. Offer to make an intro to the CEO. Perfect. One of the things that we try to counsel everybody on is the 5-minute favor. If there's anything that you can do that takes 5 minutes or less, do it. Do it right away. Do it without hesitation, because that will come back fivefold for you. Thinking through how you can, really help people get to that next stage and better their business. That's a great offer to kind of extend.
Agree. So there are some things probably that get tricky about this. The CEO offer to introduce the CEO to the degree that they're not fierce competitors that dislike each other. That's a fantastic idea, but you want to be able to consider the bigger picture of that. Another thing in line with what Lindsay recommended actually would be to see if you could introduce maybe the industry leader that perhaps serves Rockcliffe, or the relationship partner that serves Rockcliffe, or other team members that would already know the industry. Once again, you need to be careful. Honestly, when I was at PwC, I worked for FedEx, was one of my clients, and we also did work for UPS. And those two teams were not to commingle at all, based on just the ferociousness of what FedEx and UPS competes on. And that was, something that they wanted from both. If it's not that type of industry, if the two companies are not that worried about that, then these are very good things that you could consider. Now another thing that I would really work to do, and this, I'll call this one that, you obviously want to be able to help them with the R&D facility. You obviously want to maybe be able to help them with their legal department, thinly stretched or shortage. But another thing that I would do that I think is a great idea, if it works, is to ask for a lunch, a breakfast, or a coffee, or a dinner, and to see if you could actually bring Susan Anderson to that as well. A lot of times folks do not necessarily want to go to a lunch or a dinner, or even a meeting for that matter, with folks that they don't know, but you both know Susan Anderson. And to the degree that everybody's friendly, that's a bit of a secret weapon. So I used to try to bring groups together, especially if you know that Susan Anderson thinks highly of you or of your firm or the things that you do. So to be able to try to use Susan Anderson as that person that helps get you that meeting and get the relationship going is very powerful. So I've kind of covered all of the things I've thought about, if nobody else has any other ideas. So I think we can go to the next one. Okay, here we go here. Let me find my notes here. So There's there's a lot of times that you get an objection, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of a trick with how to deal with an objection, because you want to be able to not just take it when, if they say not interested, I'm happy with my current provider. There's Don't just give up. Give it one more shot. I'm not saying be pushy. I'm not saying be annoying. But there is a little trick that you can use when dealing with what I call business development objections. And what you do is, it's 3 words. I'm big on 3 words. Acknowledge whatever they're saying is the reason why they don't want to meet. Clarify what that means, ask a further question, and then give your response. So in this case, they're going to say, not interested, I'm happy with my current provider. And then I'd say something like, oh, that's fantastic. Great legal representation, having great relationships is extremely important. But then I might say, is there ever a reason why you might want to know somebody else in case you want a second opinion, or in case there is a conflict? So once again, you acknowledge. You don't just jump to the what about second opinion or what about conflict. You want to show that you empathize with them and you're on their side. You don't want it to be 2 different sides, just call and response, so to speak. So you empathize and you say, well, that's great, and by no means am I trying to get between you and your current provider. That wouldn't be right. But are there ever instances when you'd want a second opinion, when there might be a conflict that you would want to speak to another firm? And then once again, react, and once again, try to see if you can get that meeting if they show anything in there. Too busy. I'm too busy. Oh, geez. Yes. These days it feels like time is at a premium. I completely understand. An hour may be too much. Do you eat breakfast? Can we, the day is really long, obviously. Would a breakfast work better than a lunch for you? Or maybe just getting a quick coffee, 20 minutes, would that potentially work for you? So once again, empathize, clarify with your response. Then there's always, maybe, I'm busy right now, call me in a month. Great. Yes, we're all busy these days. I completely understand. When they say call, I actually try to get them to what Jill mentioned earlier, agree on next steps. So 9/22, say, okay, well, does 10/22 work for you? Does October 22 work for you? Could I give you a call at 11? Does that potentially work? I will actually try to schedule when we're going to talk next, as opposed to keep going into this cycle of which they're putting me off, putting me off, putting me off. So to the degree that you can further define it, and further get more commitment from them, the better off you're going to be, because you basically just got scheduled the follow-up that they've requested. So any additional thoughts on that, Jill? But I guess we're going to the slides.
Yeah. Sorry, John.
No, this is great. So another barrier in getting a meeting can be the gatekeeper. Gatekeepers are people that kind of you have to get through in order to get access to that person that you want to meet. In many cases, they control the person's calendar. They can be the executive or administrative assistant. They could be chiefs of staff. In many cases, they have been tasked directly with screening callers and protecting your client times. Now, or time, I should say. So by all means, your best bet is to work with these gatekeepers. Please do not be dismissive of them. Please don't act like it's so important that you speak to them. They have power at this point, and if you rub them the wrong way, they're going to be a real pain for you. So I actually kill gatekeepers with kindness. I have a tendency to reach out and say, hey, Jill, I'm hoping that you can help me out. I'm trying to get in touch with Lindsay, and I don't know if she prefers me calling directly, if she prefers emails on why I'm reaching out. I don't know if you're the person that I would speak to get on her calendar. So I actually, act like I am, if Jill's the gatekeeper, let's just say Jill's the assistant, I am asking for her help. And if you demand people's help, they have a tendency to push back. If you ask them how to best do something, they feel empowered and they're more likely to help you. People might smirk at this, but I still believe that 95% of the population when you ask them for help, are very willing to give it. So to the degree that you can be extremely friendly, get on their side, to the degree that you can make a joke with them, empathize with them, you're going to be way better off. But that doesn't always work. There are times that you may not be able to get to your individual because there is a gatekeeper, and maybe their job is to keep you from getting to them. So once again, this is where perhaps putting in a phone call at 8 or 8:30 in the morning could be beneficial, because that person probably works very long hours and they're more likely to pick up their own phone if the gatekeeper's not there, or at the end of the day. So, you know, working around them are some strategies that can work. We're going to get into a little bit more in a moment here, but this is kind of the last resort, because I really strongly suggest that you try to work with them. So next slide, please, Jill. So when you're working with the gatekeeper and they say, can you put your request in writing? This is very common. You know, it's almost their way of saying they prefer email, but basically they're going to take their email, bring it to your to the person that you're desiring to connect with, and say, what do you think? So the one thing that we tend to mess up all the time is not thanking the gatekeeper. Once again, we want to be able to show them respect. We want to be able to show them empathy. They've got a tough job, probably working for a very busy individual, and there's probably lots of people that are trying to get to this individual. So you want to stand out as a person that they like. So starting out by thanking the gatekeeper is extremely important. Refer to the past contact that you just had with them. Hey, we spoke recently on the phone, and you asked that I put this in writing. And then once again, it's time for you to write your value proposition, why you would be of benefit to the company, the individual that you are trying to reach. Then I would make sure that you write in there, if I don't hear from you within the next week, I'll put another phone call in. This has a tendency to make sure that they actually follow through and ideally help get you on the individual's calendar, or in a less good situation, telling you that they're not interested. Make sure you include your contact information, and to the degree that you have the email of the person you're wanting to meet with, I would also CC them. That is not, in my opinion, too aggressive of a move. So that's the suggestion when putting it in writing. Now, in many cases, you find that you have sent numerous emails, you've called several times. Voicemail, once again, is not ideal, because in many cases, voicemail doesn't get responded to. I usually don't leave a voicemail right away when I'm trying to get an individual, because once I've left a voicemail, it's not like I can keep calling and calling. So I am calling and hoping that this individual will pick up the phone, and I can do this personally. I know there's a comfort level with folks to use email to ask for the first meeting, but email, you never pick up additional information. You never necessarily find out why they potentially don't want to meet with you, and you're not able to do the acknowledge, clarify, respond that I've spoken about earlier. So email really gives you very few options after the objection comes on. So make sure you try to catch the person live a few times before leaving your voicemail. Call from the number that you want the person to call back. A lot of times people will just hit, the one button, return this. And if you're calling from your home phone, which is a lot more common these days with with us working remotely, if you want them, if you call from your cell phone, if you use your cell phone and you don't mind getting calls back on that, cell phones are great. If not, I suggest that you make, when you're going to leave a voicemail, that you actually do it from your office phone, if that's where you want the return call. Once you have left a voicemail, give them a week to respond. I think, being persistent but not a pain is important. And I think a week as opposed to days is much more appropriate. Send an email if the second voicemail doesn't get answered. Refer to the times that you've tried to reach out to them. Now, so some people are more likely to respond to a voicemail or a phone call, respond to an email, respond through their gatekeeper. So don't consistently do only one way of trying to reach out to them. Continue to use different ways, and you're more likely to have success. When you leave a voicemail, make sure that you're prepared. In fact, have that value proposition. Remember, that's issue, action, impact, and have it ready. Keep it short. You don't want to go over a minute. And honestly, I have a tendency when I'm leaving a voicemail that's really important, I will write it out on a pad beforehand and get the words exactly right. Now, I want to sound very natural when I leave this voicemail. I don't want to sound like I'm reading it off my pad. But it'll keep you from getting tongue-tied. I don't know about you, but maybe you've already noticed it a few times today. I have a tendency, my mind is going, and I can get tongue-tied pretty easily. So I find when I have the crutch of having written it down, I perform a lot better. And then call, clearly state your name and your callback number. And I have a tendency to make sure that I do the callback number twice, just to make sure that they don't have to go back to the voicemail and write down the number when they're writing it down, hopefully. So those are my tips on that one. Do's, okay, that's me. So we're going to do a quick summary here. So when you are reaching out for the first meeting, try to figure out what those client issues will be and anticipate what will be important to them when you're asking for the first meeting. Do work your network extremely hard. Make cold calls much warmer by finding out as much about these individuals as you possibly can, to the degree that you can get live introductions directly from the individual. That's kind of the prize. That's where you want to be. Perhaps they'll say that, hey, you can use my name. Perhaps they'll say, I don't know them that well, but this is what I can tell you about. So that's the 3 levels of information you can get when you find that you've got a mutual contact. Figure out the good times. You probably know when those are based on the folks that you're trying to reach out to and when it's busy for them. Do work with the gatekeepers. Gatekeepers, especially when these folks become clients, ideally, they're going to be wonderful for you in the future. So to the degree that you could do nice things for them, I'd have a tendency to send them cookies at Christmas time or holiday time, anything that you could do to keep these people on your side, because they control the calendar. There's lots of people trying to get to these individuals. Stand out over your competition. Do try to get the folks live a few times before falling back on voicemail. And then the number one thing, once again, this is where you are going to stand out. More than 95% of your market competition is continue to try. Business development is a numbers game, and lawyers tend to actually, for all the good things that lawyers score high on, resiliency, believe it or not, is not one of them. So we have a tendency to assume that because they're not calling back, that they have no interest. And it could be that they're just busy people. So continue to try, do normal spacing. Don't hound them too hard, but be politely persistent, so to speak. So those are our do's.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to go over the don'ts. Don't call without preparing what you're going to say. Rehearse it. So this is really important because, as I mentioned earlier, we all have different ways of communicating. We have approaches that are more comfortable to us. If I suggested some words that you could use, they may not feel natural to you. So it's very important to rehearse it, be authentic with your communication. Don't use a generic approach. We hear from GCs all the time that nobody's being, very tailored to them, right? They're sending out these blog posts or newsletters that have no, real thought put into them around what their business means. So you really have to be very tailored in your approach. Do the research, understand who they are and what their challenges may be, so you can really tailor what that looks like. Don't talk about why you want to meet. Keep the focus on what's in it for the client. Really thinking about, the most important things for the client, spinning it around to make sure that they are the front and center. As John mentioned, don't burn those bridges with the gatekeeper. They are essential to developing the relationship. Don't become a pest. Follow-up is important, but you need to figure out how to space your calls. Whenever we do prioritization, we think about things in a ABCD order. So really thinking about, prioritizing your contacts with the frequency of how often you're going to meet them. A, obviously you're trying to reach out to them more frequently. B's are a little less frequently. C's are even less frequently, and D's are those holiday card folks. So, really kind of putting that effort in to prioritize your connections at the onset. And then don't give up. Persistence pays. I can tell you that, for one particular client that we have now, I have been talking with her for 3 years. She is finally a client now. It takes a long time sometimes. There wasn't a need before, or maybe there was a need and she tried somebody else out and that didn't work out. So persistence pays off. It's just being in front of them at the right time. So one thing that we try to push everybody to do is set goals. We don't really have a whole lot of time to kind of talk through this one, but we want you to think about who you're going to reach out to, what those steps are going to be to really set that first meeting, and hold yourself accountable to setting that goal. Put a metric in place. Maybe, throughout the end of the year, you're going to try to set up 2 new meetings, and those can be, virtual meetings, but set a goal for yourself and then hold yourself accountable to actually getting those things done. So we don't have time for Q&A. We kind of have ran out of time, but John and I are always available. So I've included my contact information here. I will show John's as well. And once we send that to Lindsay, we'll send her the slide deck so you guys can use, and that has it as well. So thank you all. Lindsay, thank you for bringing us on. We appreciate it. We appreciate being included, and look forward to connecting with you all in the future.
Thank you guys so much. This was really wonderful. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. As Jill said, I will send out the slide deck and also send out their contact information so that you can contact them directly if you have any questions. And I think there was a lot of actionable, practical information included so that everyone can jump right out of this call and take some steps to continue.
Great.
Great. So thank you so much, everybody. And thank you so much, Jill and John, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too.